The wedding ceremony felt like a dream. I was there, surrounded by white flowers and twinkling lights, feeling my heart race. Jake stood in front of me, wearing that smile that always made me weak. He held my hands, his blue eyes shining with a mix of love and emotion. "Emily, I promise I will be by your side every step of this journey. You are the reason for my happiness," he said, his voice choked with emotion. My heart melted. As the guests smiled, the atmosphere was magical. I could hear laughter and murmurs of joy around me. My sister, Sarah, was among the guests, wearing a protective look that always made me feel safe. But for a brief moment, I noticed she was watching Jake with a concerned expression. What was going on in her mind? When our eyes met, she seemed to want to tell me something, but she didn't have the courage. The party began, and joy filled the air. The lively music echoed in the hall, and I felt like the protagonist of a fairy tale. But something in Jake's gaze bothered me. He was smiling, but there was a shadow in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. "Are you okay, love?" I asked, worried. He shook his head, a bit hesitantly. "Yeah, of course. I'm just thinking about how lucky I am to have you by my side." After a few hours of celebration, we finally arrived at the honeymoon suite. The atmosphere was light, and I was eager to enjoy every moment with Jake. He pulled me close, and we started laughing and talking about our dreams, but suddenly his phone vibrated. The expression on his face changed instantly. A shadow of worry crossed his eyes. "Who is it?" I asked, trying to hide my discomfort. He hesitated before answering. "Nothing, just a friend. Don't worry, everything's under control." But I could feel the tension in the air, like a dark cloud about to unfold. The night still seemed magical, but something told me that things were about to change. The music from the party was loud, but my heart was beating even faster. I watched Sarah, Emily's protective sister, as she approached Jake. Her gaze was intense, as if she were trying to decipher a mystery he refused to reveal. I moved closer, trying to listen. "Jake, are you okay? You seem worried," she said, with a tone of concern in her voice. "I'm fine, Sarah. Just a little tired," Jake replied, forcing a smile that convinced no one. I could feel the tension in the air. Something was wrong, and the party's energy seemed to morph into a heavy cloud of uncertainty. Sarah wasn't fooled. "Jake, you know you can tell me, right? I'm here to help." "I know, but it's really nothing. Let's have fun, okay?" He glanced away, and that made me uneasy. What was he hiding? The music continued, but the excitement around us felt distant. When I finally decided I needed to go to the newlyweds' room, a sharp scream cut through the air. It was Emily. I froze, blood running cold in my veins. What was happening? "Emily!" I screamed, running toward the room. All the guests stopped, the music silenced, and a wave of panic swept through the crowd. Jake was already at the door, his face pale, hands trembling. "Stay here. It's just a nightmare." He tried to calm everyone, but his voice trembled. I didn't believe it. The doors opened, and I saw Emily shaking, her eyes wide, as if she had seen a specter. "Jake, what happened?" I asked, my heart racing. He turned to me, trying to hide his desperation. She had a nightmare. "That's all," he insisted, but I couldn't ignore the look of terror on Emily's face. "No, it wasn't just a nightmare," Emily stammered, her voice barely audible. "I saw something that shouldn't be here." The festive atmosphere had transformed into confusion and concern, and I felt we were about to uncover secrets that would change everything. The air in the honeymoon suite was heavy, as if the atmosphere had been suffocated by a silent scream. I felt like a marionette with the strings cut, unable to move. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling and her eyes fixed on the floor. Jake's expression was a mix of worry and frustration, as if he were trying to convince himself that everything was under control. It was just a nightmare. Emily, he said, trying to take her hand, but she pulled away as if his touch were a flame that burned her. It wasn't just a nightmare, Jake. I saw something terrible. Her voice was choked, and I could feel the knot forming in my throat. Honey, you need to calm down. There's nothing to fear here, Jake insisted, but his words sounded empty. He looked at me as if asking for help. Sarah, can't you convince her it was just a dream? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Emily, what did you see? Can you tell us? Her gaze lifted to me, and I saw profound sadness, as if she was carrying an unbearable weight. It was a shadow, and I wasn't alone, she whispered, trembling. There was someone there, watching. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, and I noticed his face had turned pale. No, it can't be. There's no one here. Emily, you're safe, he replied, but his voice was lower, almost hesitant. As he tried to calm the situation, Tom entered. His presence always had that curious effect, like a shadow that drags itself in. What's going on here? He asked, his expression neutral, but there was a palpable tension in the air. Emily had a nightmare. She's a little shaken up, Jake replied quickly, almost as if he wanted to hide something. But I noticed the way Tom looked at him, a silent exchange that left me feeling uneasy. Let's take a moment. Maybe some fresh air will help, I suggested, trying to push away the feeling that there was more hidden beneath the surface. But as I stepped away, I could hear the party continuing below, the music playing as if nothing was happening. If you need me, I'll be here, I murmured to Emily, but she just nodded, still lost in her own thoughts. What else could be happening that Jake wasn't telling me? The idea that Tom might no more sent a chill down my spine. The party was winding down, but I knew the truth was about to emerge, and it was something that couldn't be ignored. As I looked at Jake and Tom, a determination grew within me. I needed to know what was happening, no matter the cost. The tension in the room was palpable. Jake stood with his arms crossed, and his gaze, once filled with love, was now loaded with defensiveness. I felt like an intruder in my own marriage, while Sarah watched me with growing concern. Jake, we need to talk. What really happened? You haven't been the same since Emily screamed, Sarah said, her voice steady but somewhat trembling. It's all right, Sarah. It was just a nightmare. Emily is just nervous about starting her life together, Jake replied, with a forced smile that barely reached his eyes. I looked at him, trying to understand if he was being sincere or if there was something darker behind his reassuring tone. But it wasn't just a nightmare. I feel like something is wrong. You don't have to hide anything from me, I interjected, my voice choking. Jake's gaze hardened, and I realized there was a chasm forming between us. Please, Emily, don't believe her. Sarah has always been too protective. I've changed, I promise, Jake insisted, his hand reaching out toward me. Part of me wanted to run to him, but another, more rational part, urged me to stay by my sister's side. You're not being honest, Jake. I saw your expression earlier. What are you hiding? Sarah wasn't willing to back down, and that only made Jake retreat further. He took a deep breath, his expression shifting into a mask of frustration. When Tom entered the room, his presence added a new layer of tension. He looked at us, realizing that the conversation wasn't going well. What's going on here? Why are you two fighting? This is supposed to be a night of celebration, he said, trying to change the mood. Sarah is just worried about what happened to Emily. "It's nothing serious," Jake replied, a bit louder than necessary. The defensiveness in his voice made me uneasy. "Emily, you need to trust Jake. He's a good man." Tom tried to intervene, but I couldn't ignore the spark of something more in his words. Something that made me want to investigate the truth. "You don't know his past, Tom. You know he's not as perfect as he seems," Sarah shot back, and I could feel the doubt growing inside me. "Enough. I don't want to have this conversation anymore. Let's calm down and forget about it," Jake said, his voice becoming more authoritative. But I knew I couldn't just let it all go. Something was wrong, and I needed to find out what it was. In the silence that followed, I looked at Sarah. I had a vision, something I can't quite explain. It was like a shadow was hanging over us, something threatening. My voice was low, but there was a growing strength in my conviction. Sarah's expression softened, and I realized she felt it too. "We need to investigate further. I can't let you be in danger." "Emily," she replied, her determination renewed. And so, determined, we joined forces in search of answers, while Jake and Tom watched us. A mix of concern and something else, something I couldn't quite identify. The weight of uncertainty hung over us, but I knew the truth was closer than we imagined. I was in an emotional whirlwind. The party around me had become a blur of laughter and distant music. The bright lights and cheerful voices felt so far away. All I could think about was Emily, trembling and scared, in the bridal suite. What had happened? Hearing her screams echoing through the party made my heart race. I needed to uncover the truth. The first person I saw was Tom. He was leaning against a wall, his eyes fixed on the ground, his expression tense. "Tom, what happened in there? You know something, don't you?" I asked, urgency in my voice. He lifted his head, but the nervous expression didn't give me confidence. "Sarah, it was just a nightmare. She's just overwhelmed. There's nothing to worry about." "Overwhelmed? You didn't see her state. You and Jake have a past that he doesn't want anyone to know about. What happened?" I was furious, but also scared. Tom hesitated, and that made me even more uneasy. "You don't understand, Sarah. Some things are better left in the past. If you really care about her, you'll tell me the truth," I insisted. He took a deep breath, but said nothing, and that was enough for me to realize that something much darker was being concealed. I returned to Emily, my heart heavy. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, I don't know what happened." Suddenly, everything went dark, and I saw a shadow, a presence, as if something wanted to grab me. Her voice trembled, and I moved closer, holding her hands. "We need to get out of here, Emily. We need to stay away from Jake. I don't trust him, but he's my husband, Sarah. I can't just run away." Her hesitation cut through me like a knife. "You have to trust me, Emily. I feel like he's hiding something terrible. We need to protect ourselves." Finally, her expression changed. "What do you suggest I do?" "Let's leave. Now. He can't find us?" Emily looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw fear mixed with determination. "Okay, let's go." Feeling the weight of the decision, I pulled her out of the room, my heart pounding. I knew we were about to cross into dangerous territory, but there was no turning back. Whatever was lurking, I was determined to face it. The tension hung in the air like an oppressive cloak as Sarah and I tried to escape what seemed like an endless nightmare. My heart raced in my chest, and adrenaline coursed through my veins. But before we could take another step, Jake appeared in front of us, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and something darker. "Where are you two going?" he questioned, his voice trembling with an intensity that made me hesitate. "We need to talk, Jake," Sarah replied, firm, but I could see the uncertainty in her gaze. "Emily isn't well. We need to get out of here." "It's not that simple," Jake said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that always made me nervous. "I was trying to protect you, Emily. There are things you don't understand, things I can't reveal right now." "Protect from what?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "From whom? What are you hiding, Jake?" His expression hardened, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I can't talk about it. It's for your own good." At that moment, the door swung open abruptly, and Tom entered, his face flushed with anger. "You can't keep hiding this, Jake. It's time to end the lies." He looked on the verge of a nervous breakdown. "Shut up, Tom," Jake shouted, but it was too late. The truth was about to explode. "You don't understand what really happened." "I understand perfectly," Tom retorted, his voice trembling. "I was responsible for the accident, and you stayed silent to protect me. But now, Emily needs to know." I felt the ground open beneath my feet, reality twisting into something I couldn't comprehend. "Accident? What accident?" I asked, my voice faltering. Jake looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. "Emily, please no. I didn't want you to find out this way. You can't protect me from a truth I deserve to know, Jake." I was furious, but at the same time, a part of me trembled with fear. "I didn't know how to tell you," Jake said, his voice low and broken. "I stayed silent because I thought it was for the best. But I can't anymore. I'm going to turn Tom into the police. He needs to face the consequences." Those words resonated within me. I was free of secrets, but the pain of knowing that the man I loved hid such a dark past was unbearable. I looked at Jake, and despite my anger, I saw the search for redemption in his eyes. "I need time," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to rebuild our lives, but I can't do that while you carry this burden." He nodded, a mix of relief and despair in his eyes. From that moment on, everything would change. The love we had was strong, but the weight of the past demanded that we face the truth. And so, together, we would confront the shadows one step at a time.